Deadly shootings, stabbings, and car rammings. During a 6-month period of attacks, 28 Israelis and 2 Americans died, and 188 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fire. But only one of these incidents was caught graphically on camera. Sergeant Elor Azaria shot dead a wounded and unarmed Palestinian man, Abdel Fatah al-Sharif, who had stabbed another Israeli army soldier minutes earlier in Hebron. After the incident, only 5% of Israelis thought the act was murder. And now that a military court has convicted him of manslaughter, more than 67% of Israelis support a pardon, including the Prime Minister.
Killing a terrorist is one of the most moral things you can do.
צבא כן צריך לשפוט אותו, ואני חושב שזה הדרך הנכונה.
זה בושה למדינת ישראל שמתנהגת ככה לחייל.
Sentiments indicative of a militarized society where sons and daughters are sent into compulsory military service. The Israeli army has been accused of operating with impunity in cracking down on Palestinian protesters, sometimes with deadly force. But a segment of Israeli society appears to accept the nature of the security forces, saying whatever the cost, they ensure their safety. While Azaria's sentence has yet to be handed down, his conviction has cracked open the fault lines of this deeply divided nation. Natalie Pohanen, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Tel Aviv is Gideon Levy. He's an author and award-winning journalist with Haaretz. And from Jerusalem, legal analyst Yonah Bob. He followed the trial closely since it began. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Yonah Bob, let me start with you. Do you agree with the conviction, manslaughter?
Absolutely. I think it's very clear that even if there were aspects, and I was surprised in the trial that it was grayer than it looked like from the first video. When you first see the original video, it looks black and white, you know, cold-blooded execution-style killing. There was actually evidence on the other side that made it more complicated. People were yelling about a bomb. One of the officers called in about a bomb squad, but at the end of the day, there was a soldier named TM, a friend of Elor Azaria, who's convicted of manslaughter, who said, he said to me, he did it in revenge. I think that was a decisive point. There were other points also, but once you have someone admitting to one of their friends, not one of the officers who might have been wanting to cover for themselves about how the situation was treated, but a friend of him said he did it in revenge, I think that sealed it. So it was the right call by the court.
Okay, Gideon Levy, he was convicted of manslaughter. This, I guess, can be used as an example of Israeli democracy in action. A soldier committed a crime and he was convicted for it. He was punished for it. A rotten apple. What do you think?
No, unfortunately, it cannot, because there were so many executors before Sergeant Azaria, and unfortunately, there will be also after him. The only difference was the camera, which documented the killing. And I'm very happy about this trial, but to take this trial as a representing trial, by all means not, because we are facing now, after 2 years of so-called individual intifada, so many executions. We face 2 major operations in Gaza with hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians being killed, and not a single soldier was brought to justice. So let's not exaggerate it.
Okay, Yonah, Gideon Levy saying let's not exaggerate it, and the majority of Israelis so far don't seem to agree with you, believing that this was the correct decision. You have Prime Minister Netanyahu, who wants him pardoned. 67% of Israelis want him pardoned, according to a Channel 2 poll. There have been death threats against the Israeli army chief, Mr. Eisenkot, insinuating he'd face the same fate as Yitzhak Rabin. What does that tell us about the zeitgeist, Yonah?
First of all, it's an honor to be on with one of Israel's top journalists, Gideon Levy, even though we might have some different worldviews. I think it's important to set the framework, because Mr. Levy did a good job at setting out a lot of the criticism of Israel. What we have to remember is there's an organization called Hamas in Gaza, which is committed to Israel's destruction. There's Hezbollah in Lebanon, also committed to Israel's destruction. The only thing that's keeping these organizations from destroying Israel is the Israeli army. And that's a lot of what this is about. The fight in Israeli society is there's, as we call it, the so-called knife intifada going on, and there's violence on both sides, accusations on both sides, but Israel has to defend itself. What does Israel do when there's a gray situation? There have been some gray situations where I think it is possible that Israel has made mistakes. Maybe there's some people who should have been investigated more who weren't, but this is a case that Israel got right, and it wasn't an easy case. Like I said, I was in court, and there were arguments that really could have been made against this, that there was at least a potential danger there. In criminal law, right? This isn't, publicly what we think. Criminal law, you have to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt. So when we say 188 were killed, Israel says 2/3 of the Palestinians who've been killed have been attackers. And when you investigate, did somebody commit a war crime, you have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay,
so I think it's important to put things in proportions. I think Mr. Levy is right that this is an unusual case, but I do think it does show something about Israeli democracy.
Let me put another point of his to you. He said if this was not caught on video, there would be no charges. He's right, isn't he?
There have been cases where if they hadn't been caught on video, there wouldn't have been charges and nobody would have even known about them. That is true. This particular case, I don't know if there would have been criminal charges or not. There would have definitely been a disciplinary proceeding because even before the video came out, he made the admission that I told you about before, that he had done it in revenge. So for sure there would have been a disciplinary proceeding. Whether there would have been criminal charges for manslaughter, I can't say for sure. That's a good question Mr. Levy has put out on that one.
Okay, Gideon, so let me take with what Yonah said and add to it this quote from Prime Minister Netanyahu. He said, "We have one army, which is the basis of our existence. The soldiers of the IDF are our sons and daughters, and they need to remain above dispute." When you hear that, what does that mean to you, Gideon?
If it comes from the Prime Minister, I guess he wants to say that they should be also above any suspicion. And this is unacceptable in any state of law, in any democracy. I never questioned the need to have an army, even though I think the Israeli army is by far too strong and too big and too rich. But that's a different question. But the fact that you need an army does not make it having a free license to kill, a free license to bomb, a free license to destroy. And in the recent years, I have the impression that the Israeli army was reacting almost without any borders. You can see it in Gaza again and again, and you see it on a daily basis in the occupied territories. The fact that you need an army, the fact that we all admire our sons, the soldiers, does not mean that they shouldn't follow any kind of rules.
Yonah, does that sound reasonable to you?
There's international law, and I do believe the Israeli army is committed to international law. There definitely were mistakes made in the 2014 Gaza war. There may even be indictments for war crimes against soldiers. There's currently 30 criminal investigations going on. We don't know how they're all going to turn out. It's true that so far most of them have been closed. But we need to see how that turns out. As someone who's also a lawyer, I believe before we make a pronouncement about how good the Israeli investigations are, we need to see how they turn out in the end.
Yonah, you mentioned Israelis being very angry and supporting a pardon for the soldier who sort of executed this kid at point-blank range. You mentioned all of that and contextualize it with the fact that there's been the stabbing intifada, there's Hamas, there's Hezbollah. For Palestinians, they contextualize the stabbings by saying, hey, there's a brutal military occupation in force. Azaria was 19 when he shot Sharif, who was 21. What does that tell you about any future prospects of a just peace, Yonah?
I mean, I think it is equally as tragic, when a Palestinian teenager gets into a protest and is hurt by an Israeli soldier, or an Israeli soldier is hurt. I think it's equally a problem on both sides. I'm in favor of peace. I'm in favor of major concessions for peace. I think there could be blame put on both sides that we haven't gotten there yet. I do think, I'm an optimist, so I think there's going to be peace someday. There is peace for about 40 years with Egypt, peace with Jordan. Someday I think there will be peace with the Palestinians. Not on the horizon right now. It's not even being seriously talked about, and that is the real problem. What do we do in the meantime? I think it's important that at least in this case, if the Israeli army has gotten some things wrong in the past, and I don't think the Israeli army is perfect, I do think they try hard, but at least in this case they got it right. When Gadi Eisenkot, the IDF chief of staff, said, the 18-year-olds who join the army, when you put a gun in their hands, they're not just children, they become soldiers, they have responsibilities, they have to follow international law. That's an important message, and I hope it's a message that other Israeli soldiers will take when they get into great cases in the future.
Gideon, if he is pardoned, what will that mean?
It will mean, first of all, I think that there will be a pardon in a certain stage, I don't know when, but it means that the whole trial was totally in vain. Who needs a trial if it ends up like this? It means that in Israel, it's only about the people to decide and not about law or order or court or justice. But, you know, let's listen to the masses, what they ask for, and let's follow the masses. And the masses are totally brainwashed in Israel, getting more and more nationalistic, racist, and in many cases also militaristic. Let's follow their masses. We know how it ended in other regimes in history, and hopefully we'll not get to there here.
Gideon Levy and Yonah Bob, unfortunately we are out of time. I've got to move on to another segment. Thank you very much for joining us.